She said it right to my face. If it's left outside, it's fair game. Then she walked off with my box like it had her name on it. That was the moment I realized my HOA president, Karen Hewland, wasn't just a power-drunk rule enforcer. She was a thief. I'm Michael Prentice, and I used to think keeping my head down in this neighborhood would save me from her radar. I was wrong. It all started the morning my limited edition sneakers, my prized cosmic comets, vanished from my porch. These weren't just any sneakers. Deep blue with silver streaks that shimmered under light, they were the kind of shoes collectors waited months to find. I'd saved for them, ordered them direct from the manufacturer, and taken 100 photos before boxing them up for a return exchange. But when the courier didn't pick them up that day, I left the empty box by the door, thinking it would be fine until morning. In Karen's neighborhood, nothing was fine for long. Karen ran our HOA like a one-woman government, half politician, half dictator. She wore pastel cardigans like battle armor and patrolled the streets with a clipboard that could ruin your weekend. Her rules were vague, her fines were real, and she never missed a chance to remind us she protected property values. People feared her, tolerated her, and secretly prayed she'd move. She never did. The next morning, the box was gone. No knock, no note, just gone. I figured maybe the courier had come early. 2 days later, I learned the truth in the most infuriating way imaginable. I was outside watering my petunias. A color she'd already warned me wasn't community approved. When I saw her son, Grant Hewland, strutting down the sidewalk with his friends. Grant was the kind of teenager who thought arrogance was a personality, loud, careless, with a smirk that seemed surgically attached to his face. But what caught my attention wasn't his smirk, it was his shoes. Deep blue, silver streaks, the same shimmer I knew by heart, my cosmic comets. The watering can nearly slipped from my hand. I froze, staring, trying to convince myself it was coincidence. But then I saw it, a small scuff mark on the left toe. A scratch I'd made the first night I'd tried them on in my living room. My mark. My proof. My stomach twisted into a hard knot. He was wearing my shoes. Grant noticed my stare. His eyes flicked down, then up again, and that smirk turned into something worse, a knowing grin. He lifted his foot, admiring the sneaker like it was brand new, then gave me a slow, deliberate wink before turning back to his friends. The laugh that followed carried down the street like a taunt. I felt heat rise in my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to march over there, grab him by the collar, and demand my property back. But I knew exactly how that would play out. He'd cry harassment, and Mommy Dearest would come storming out in full HOA regalia, clipboard in hand, accusing me of aggressive behavior. I'd be fined, maybe even reported. That's how Karen operated. She provoked you until you broke a rule she could punish. So I didn't move. I just stood there, gripping the watering can until my knuckles turned white, watching him walk away in my $350 shoes. Each step he took felt like another slap across the face. The injustice of it made my pulse hammer in my ears. Inside my head, Dave's voice echoed, my best friend, always the level one. Think it through, Mike. Don't give them an excuse. I could almost hear him laughing at me from across town. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the space where the empty shipping box had been. The memory of Karen's smug voice. If it's left outside, it's fair game, played over and over like a bad song I couldn't turn off. My anger didn't fade. It calcified into something sharper. She thought she'd get away with it. She thought I'd roll over like every other homeowner she'd bullied into silence. But she didn't know me yet. I wasn't going to shout, or threaten, or beg. I was going to do something better. I was going to prove it. And when I did, the whole neighborhood would see what kind of person their precious HOA president really was. The game had just begun. When the fines started rolling in, I knew it wasn't random. It was war. It began less than a week after I caught Grant strutting down the sidewalk in my stolen sneakers. I hadn't confronted them yet, but apparently, Karen could sense rebellion in the air. That's how it always worked with her. One hint of defiance, and she'd make your life miserable until you fell back in line. The first fine appeared taped to my front door like a scarlet letter. Violation. Improperly coiled hose. $50. I remember standing there on the porch staring down at my garden hose. Sure, it wasn't coiled into perfect circles like a military parade, but it was far from a mess. The absurdity of it was almost funny. Almost. I snapped a photo before unpeeling the notice and tossing it on the kitchen table. 2 days later, another violation. This time, my mailbox flag had apparently been left in the upright position for more than 24 hours. I actually laughed when I read it, until I realized she'd fined me another $50. It hit me then. This wasn't coincidence. This was Karen tightening her grip, reminding me who held the power here. So I decided to take that power back. With a pen, I bought a new notebook, crisp white pages and a blue leather cover. Across the first page, I wrote in bold capital letters, the Hooland file. I started documenting everything. The fines, the dates, the times, even the weather. I printed photos, stapled receipts, and wrote down every word from her absurd notices. I even included the day she stole my sneakers, complete with a hand-drawn sketch of the scuff mark that proved they were mine. It felt a little obsessive, maybe even paranoid, but deep down, I knew I wasn't crazy. I was building a case. Within days, the file started to grow. Karen was relentless. Every petty rule in the book, she twisted to target me. One morning, I caught her standing at the edge of my yard during her so-called routine landscape inspection, clipboard in hand, scribbling notes about my flower bed. She didn't even look ashamed. She smiled and said, "Just keeping our neighborhood beautiful, Michael." Then she pointed her pen toward my petunias and added, "Though purple might be a bit too bold for the HOA's approved palette." Her voice had that sugar-sweet poison tone that could curdle milk. I was done playing the victim. That night, I started asking around, quietly at first. A quick chat with Mr. Henderson while he grabbed his mail, then a conversation with Mrs. Gable from across the street. It turned out, everyone had their own story, each one worse than the last. Henderson had been fined for creating tonal discord because his late wife's wind chimes supposedly disrupted neighborhood harmony. Mrs. Gable's welcome mat had faded from teal to aqua, which apparently violated aesthetic uniformity. Even the young couple at the corner lot got a notice because their toddler's chalk drawings counted as graffiti. It was like peeling back the wallpaper on a perfectly painted room only to find rot underneath. Karen wasn't maintaining order. She was weaponizing it. The HOA's so-called beautification fund, funded by all our fines, was supposed to go toward public spaces, flower beds, park benches, small improvements. But as I flipped through the neighborhood's financial bulletins, I noticed something strange. The only beautification happening was in front of Karen's house. New fountain, new paving, new landscaping, all under the vague label, community enhancement. That's when the legal side of my brain clicked in. HOA members have a right to request itemized financial statements. It's part of every association's transparency clause. Those records are public to members, but Karen never shared them. Not once. That wasn't just shady. It was a red flag waving on top of her expensive new fountain. The Hooland file was no longer just a notebook. It was a weapon. One built on facts, not fury. For every bogus fine, I added a counter-entry. For every lie, I stapled proof. And just when I started feeling like I was finally gaining ground, the universe, or Karen, hit me again. It was a Friday afternoon when I got the delivery notification. My nephew's birthday gift, a massive Lego set I'd ordered weeks ago, had just arrived. But when I went to grab it from my porch, the space was empty. Not even a scrap of tape left behind. I froze. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the delivery driver. It was them. Again. And this time, I was done playing defense. He shoved the box into his mom's SUV in broad daylight. That was the moment the line between petty HOA bullying and outright theft disappeared. My nephew's birthday was in 2 days. He'd been begging for this Lego set. One of those massive ones with thousands of pieces and a tiny instruction book thicker than a novel. I'd ordered it weeks in advance, wanting to surprise him. The delivery alert pinged on my phone while I was on a work call. I figured I'd grab it after. 5 minutes, maybe 10. But when I stepped outside, the box was gone. At first, I thought maybe the driver had left it at the wrong address. That's when I spotted movement down the street. Grant Hooland, Karen's son, half wrestling a large rectangular box into the back of his mom's silver SUV. It was unmistakable. The same dimensions, the same tape pattern across the top. The boy wasn't even trying to be discreet. The rage hit me like a wave, sharp and blinding. My heart thudded so hard I could feel it in my throat. He saw me watching, of course. He didn't flinch, didn't panic. He gave this little shrug, like we both knew what was happening, but only one of us was allowed to do anything about it. Then he slammed the trunk shut and walked off like he'd just taken out the trash. That was it. My sneakers had been one thing. Personal, painful, but survivable. This was different. This was a child's birthday gift. A gift meant for joy, turned into evidence of arrogance. I knew better than to storm down there, but every part of me screamed too. Instead, I took a deep breath, went inside, and picked up the phone. I called the non-emergency police line. The dispatcher's voice was calm and practiced, the kind of tone built from years of hearing frustration through the line. I explained everything. The missing packages, the fines, the sneakers, and now this. I made sure to sound rational, even though my hands were shaking. She listened, typing quietly. Then came the same sentence I'd feared. Sir, without video evidence or a direct witness who saw him take it from your porch, there's not much we can do. I stared at the floor. I saw him putting it in the car, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's the same box. It was on my porch 10 minutes earlier. I understand, she replied gently. And I'll send an officer to take a report, but for theft cases like this, proof of possession or footage is what we need to move forward. Proof. Always proof. When the officer arrived, he was polite, tired eyes, soft voice, a man used to dealing with nonsense but still trying to do right by people. I showed him my email confirmation, my photo of the Lego box from the delivery notice, and the growing pages of my Hooland file. He flipped through it, nodding slowly. You're doing the right thing, he said finally. Documenting everything. HOA disputes can get ugly. This sounds like harassment mixed with theft. He went over to Karen's house next, and I watched from my window, pulse hammering. I saw her open the door. Feigned surprise painted across her face. She even did the classic hand-to-chest move, the "oh my goodness, how could you accuse me?" routine. Grant stood behind her, eyes on the floor, pretending to be bored. The officer spoke with them for a few minutes, then walked back across the street. He sighed. She denies everything, he said. Claims her son was just cleaning the garage. No box in the car now. Without more, my hands are tied. I nodded, but inside I was burning. He handed me a card with a small printed number at the bottom. Case 124. I wrote it across a new page in the Hooland file in bold dark ink. It wasn't victory, but it was something. An official record, a line in the sand. As the officer drove away, I stood at my window, watching Karen's porch lights flicker on. She thought she'd won again, hiding behind her HOA badge and fake innocence. But this time, something inside me shifted. The law needed evidence, so I'd get them evidence. Real, undeniable, frame-by-frame proof that no one could talk their way out of. Karen thought she could steal without consequence. I was about to show her just how wrong she was. If she wanted to steal again, fine. I'd gift wrap her downfall. That thought came to me somewhere between anger and exhaustion, staring at the blank pages of my Hooland file late one night. I'd done everything by the book, reported it, documented it, waited. But the system only worked if you could hand it proof on a silver platter. And proof was exactly what I was going to get, wrapped neatly in cardboard and sealed with tape. The police needed video evidence, and Karen needed to be caught in the act. So I decided to turn my porch into a stage and her greed into the star performance. If she wanted to keep treating my property like her personal shopping aisle, I'd make sure her next purchase came with a surprise she'd never forget. The first step was surveillance. But not the obvious kind. Karen was sharp, and she'd notice any new camera faster than a raccoon spots a trash can. I needed something discreet, something invisible. I spent an entire evening diving down internet rabbit holes, security forums, spy cam blogs, DIY tech channels. By morning, I'd learned more about covert surveillance than I ever wanted to know. 2 hours later, I had my setup. One tiny pinhole camera disguised as a motion sensor inside the door frame, and another one hidden inside a decorative birdhouse that hung just above the porch steps. Both streamed straight to my phone. 2 angles, full coverage, zero chance of detection. From the street, it looked exactly the same. Quiet, harmless, suburban perfection. But I wasn't satisfied with just catching her. I wanted her to feel what it was like to be humiliated, to be caught red-handed in a way that would stain, literally and figuratively. That's when I remembered something I'd seen online. A viral video of a porch pirate getting blasted by a glitter bomb. It was brilliant, harmless, but devastating to the ego. The idea stuck like static. Still, I wasn't an engineer. I'd need help. That's when I thought of my neighbor, Mitch. Uncle Mitch, as the neighborhood kids called him. A retired engineer with a garage full of gadgets, wires, and half-finished inventions. He'd once been fined by Karen for a satellite dish she claimed was too reflective. If anyone had a personal reason to join my cause, it was him. I showed up at his door with a 6-pack of his favorite craft beer and my plan. When I told him I wanted to rig a decoy package, his eyes lit up like Christmas morning. For Karen, he asked, grinning, "Michael, my boy, you just made my week." We spent the next few evenings turning his garage into a glitter-filled laboratory. He built a spring-loaded mechanism from a plastic container and 4 collapsible arms. The idea was simple. When the box was opened, the arms would snap up and launch the contents in every direction. We tested it 3 times with regular confetti before loading the real mix. Biodegradable glitter in neon green, hot pink, and electric blue. It looked like chaos in a jar. For the final touch, Mitch suggested we add a bit of water-based theatrical dye, the kind used in movies. Skin-safe, harmless, but impossible to wash off quickly. 1 puff, and she'd be glowing like a radioactive jellyfish for days. Before setting it, I even called the non-emergency line to confirm that using non-toxic glitter and dye on my own property was completely legal. The officer chuckled and said, "If it's harmless and she's stealing it, that's on her." That was all I needed to hear. We sealed the mechanism inside a standard shipping box, printed a fake label from a luxury electronics company, and placed it neatly on my porch. From the street, it looked irresistible. A high-end delivery just waiting for a sticky-fingered HOA president to inspect. As I walked back inside, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Every nerve buzzed with anticipation. The trap was perfect. Legal, harmless, and poetic. All that was left was patience. I sat at my desk, checking the live feed on my phone. The bait box sat there, golden in the late afternoon sun, looking so innocent it was almost beautiful. Sooner or later, curiosity or greed, or both, would get the better of her. And when it did, my porch would light up with justice. HOA, script, Ahsan, said. Her clipboard hit the seat, and she bolted straight for my porch. It happened on a quiet Wednesday afternoon, the kind where even the birds seemed too lazy to sing. I'd been pretending to work, but really, my eyes were glued to the live feed from my hidden cameras. The fake package had been sitting untouched for 2 days, taunting me from the screen. Every passing delivery truck, every jogger, every gust of wind made my heart skip. I was starting to think Karen had lost her nerve, or worse, learned her lesson. But Karen never learned. She enforced. That's when I saw her silver SUV roll into frame. My pulse spiked. She parked 2 houses down, engine idling like a waiting accomplice. Karen stepped out, wearing her usual power uniform. Pressed khakis, pastel cardigan, sunglasses big enough to double as shields. Her ever-present clipboard was clutched under one arm like a weapon. I watched as she began her usual inspection, walking down the sidewalk, pretending to evaluate everyone's hedges. She stopped in front of my house, her eyes locking on the box. Even through the screen, I could tell the exact moment greed overpowered reason. Her gaze darted left, then right. No cars, no witnesses. She placed the clipboard on her passenger seat, squared her shoulders, and marched straight for my front steps. The door frame camera caught everything. The birdhouse camera got the side angle. Her face was set in that smug, self-righteous look she always wore when correcting someone. But this wasn't about HOA rules anymore. This was theft, again, and she knew it. Her hand snatched the box like she was entitled to it. 10 seconds flat. She didn't even look back. I couldn't help but laugh. A low, shaky sound somewhere between disbelief and satisfaction. She was predictable to the second. Within minutes, the GPS app on my phone pinged. Movement detected. The little blue dot that represented the decoy started sliding across the digital map. My chest tightened with excitement as it stopped precisely at her address, 2 blocks away. I leaned back in my chair, heart hammering. It was done. She'd taken the bait. I didn't have to wait long. First came the muffled pop. It was faint, almost delicate, like a champagne cork. Then, seconds later, a sound that will forever live rent-free in my memory. A shriek. Not a scream of pain, but one of pure, undiluted rage and disbelief. It carried through the still afternoon air, echoing off the pristine houses of our perfectly manicured street. I bolted to my front window, phone in hand, and hit record. Across the street, Karen burst out of her front door like she was fleeing a wildfire. Except the only thing burning was her pride. She was glowing. Literally glowing. Her hair, her face, her clothes, everything was drenched in blinding neon green and sparkling glitter. She looked like a radioactive swamp monster who'd fallen into a craft store explosion. It wasn't just a dusting. It was a full-body masterpiece of sticky, shimmering chaos. She stumbled into the sunlight, gasping and cursing, smearing the dye deeper every time she touched her face. Neighbors peeked through their blinds, some stepping onto porches in stunned silence. Her shrieks turned into a string of incoherent threats. Then her eyes found mine. For a brief, glorious second, we locked eyes, me inside, her outside, dripping in glitter and fury. She pointed a trembling green-stained finger toward my house, screaming something I couldn't quite make out through the glass. It didn't matter. Her expression said everything. She knew I'd set her up and I didn't care. I stood there grinning, my phone still recording. That video would become the crown jewel of the Hulan file. The HOA queen had just been dethroned by her own greed. What would you do if your HOA president turned radioactive? But before I could celebrate, I glanced back at my phone and froze. The little blue GPS dot on the tracker app had started moving again. It was leaving her house. She wasn't throwing the box away. She was taking it somewhere else. Whatever she was hiding, I was about to find out. That blue GPS dot was leading me straight into her secret. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel, the glow from my phone screen lighting up the dark interior. The tracker signal pulsed on the map, moving steadily away from Karen's house, heading west through the edge of town. My decoy box, my trap, was in motion, and my heartbeat was matching its pace. Whatever she was doing with it, it wasn't just damage control. She wasn't panicking, she was hiding something. I tailed her from a few blocks back, keeping my headlights off whenever I could. The October air was cool, sharp with that smell of asphalt and distant rain. Every turn she took felt like a test of nerve. The blue dot turned down an industrial road, past warehouses and auto shops, until it finally stopped at a place called Lock It Up Self-Storage, a sprawling complex surrounded by chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. I parked across the street in the lot of a closed diner and killed the engine. Her silver SUV idled for a moment at the gate. She rolled down her window, punched in a code, and the steel doors slid open with a metallic groan. The floodlight above flickered weakly as her car disappeared into the rows of identical beige units. Then the gate shut behind her with a heavy clank, cutting her off from view. I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. My nerves stretched thin. Finally, the blue dot stopped moving, settling in the back corner of the property, Unit C27. She stayed inside that unit for a while. I imagined her there, covered in flecks of neon green, trying to figure out how to destroy the evidence without leaving more of it behind. But glitter sticks to everything, especially guilt. After another few minutes, her SUV rolled back out, headlights cutting through the night. She didn't even glance in my direction as she turned onto the main road and vanished into the dark. That's when I made my move. I crossed the street, keeping my distance from the fence. I knew better than to trespass. The law is crystal clear about property lines. But what it doesn't forbid is looking. Filming from a public sidewalk is 100% legal, and I was about to make the most of that freedom. I found the back row where my tracker's signal glowed strongest. Unit C27. The corrugated metal door had a small gap at the bottom, just enough to see through if you crouched down. I got on one knee, phone flashlight off, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my palms. What I saw made my blood run cold. Inside that dimly lit space were stacks upon stacks of cardboard boxes. Amazon, Best Buy, Zappos, Target. Every major retailer you could imagine. Hundreds of them piled to the ceiling. Some had shipping labels still visible, names scrawled in black ink. I couldn't read them clearly, but I knew what they were. Our neighborhood's missing packages. Every lost delivery, every unsolved theft, every porch pirate mystery traced back here. Then I noticed something else. A faint shimmer under the sliver of light creeping through the door gap. Tiny particles glinting on the concrete floor and across several of the boxes near the entrance. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the small UV flashlight Mitch had given me. The moment I clicked it on, the scene transformed. The glitter glowed like a crime scene under black light. Bright neon trails coating the boxes, the lock handle, the floor. Even the metal door had streaks of faint, glowing residue. My glitter, my dye, my proof. Karen hadn't just stolen from me. She'd been running a full-scale theft operation out of her HOA presidency, hiding it behind the facade of community improvement. The so-called beautification fund wasn't funding flowers. It was funding fraud. I steadied my phone, pressed record, and filmed everything through the fence gap. The unit number, the boxes, the glowing dust. I even narrated quietly, marking the date, time, and my exact location. I made sure to capture the sidewalk beneath my feet, proof that I never stepped onto her property. When I finished, I backed away slowly, the reality of what I'd uncovered sinking in like ice water. The game had just escalated far beyond fines and stolen sneakers. I walked back to my car, hands trembling as I opened my phone. The blue dot was still pulsing on the map, motionless inside Unit C27. I scrolled to my contact list, found the number on the officer's card from Case 124, and hit call. "Hello," I said, voice steady despite the adrenaline. "This is Michael Prentice. I'm calling to update a police report, case number 124. I've located the stolen property. And a lot more." The sting had officially begun. When the warrant came through, her whole empire collapsed in neon. It didn't even take a full day. The officer I'd spoken to called back that same night, his voice sharper this time, more alert. "Mr. Prentice," he said, "we reviewed your footage, the GPS data, and your documentation. That's more than enough for probable cause." Those words sent a rush of satisfaction through me. For weeks, Karen had hidden behind technicalities and HOA jargon. Now, it was my paperwork that was going to take her down. By dawn, the raid was already in motion. I parked my car a block away from the storage facility, watching from a distance as the police assembled under the dim morning light. 2 patrol cars, 1 unmarked sedan, and a forensics van. They moved quietly but with purpose, cutting the padlock on Unit C-27 after confirming the warrant with the on-site manager. When that door rolled open, I wish I could have seen Karen's face, but the officers' reactions were more than enough. Even from across the street, I could see the flashlights sweeping over piles of stolen boxes, stacks of unopened electronics, and glimmering trails of neon glitter that caught under every beam of light. The crime scene looked like a rave gone wrong. They began cataloging the evidence piece by piece. Cameras flashed. Officers called out serial numbers. One of them laughed under his breath, pointing to the specks of green glitter on the lock. "Guess she left her fingerprints," he said. In total, over 200 stolen packages were recovered, valued at more than $50,000. My glitter bomb hadn't just exposed Karen. It had solved half the neighborhood's missing deliveries. When I met with Detective Vargas later that morning, he was almost impressed. "You know," he said, flipping through my Hooland file, "most people just complain on Facebook. You built a case. This is textbook documentation." I couldn't help but smile, though my hands were still trembling. I wasn't used to hearing praise from anyone with a badge, especially after weeks of being ignored. Then he said something that stuck with me. "Good thinking with the tracker, too. Perfectly legal since it started on your property. That GPS data is gold in court." Legal nugget. In most U.S. states, GPS trackers placed on your own property are fully admissible evidence in theft cases. It's not surveillance, it's recovery. When I got home, the adrenaline finally wore off. I stood by my window, looking out at Karen's house. Her SUV was still parked there, the same one that carried stolen goods just hours before. She had no idea the walls were closing in, that the evidence was already sitting in a police evidence locker, dusted with her fingerprints and my glitter. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. But peace in this neighborhood never lasted long. The very next afternoon, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw 2 men dressed in black polos, with embroidered patches that read, HOA Security. Karen wasn't just losing control, she was lashing out. 2 men in black polos. "We're here for a gate inspection." Yeah, right. The knock was hard enough to rattle the doorframe. When I looked through the peephole, I saw them. 2 strangers standing on my porch, both wearing matching black shirts with a cheap-looking logo embroidered over the chest that read HOA Security. I'd lived here 5 years and never once heard of any HOA security detail. Karen must have printed those shirts last night. The first man was tall and lean, with the kind of smirk that comes from thinking you're untouchable. The second looked like a refrigerator with arms. Thick neck, heavy stance, and hands that could crush a basketball. I kept the chain on the door and cracked it open just enough to speak. "Can I help you?" I asked. The big one stepped forward. "Michael Prentice?" His voice was low, rehearsed, almost robotic. "We're with HOA Security. President Hooland received a complaint about unauthorized surveillance devices on your property. We're here to inspect." I almost laughed. "Unauthorized surveillance devices?" I said. "You mean the cameras I installed after someone kept stealing from me? You'll need to show me a badge or a warrant for that." The lanky one sneered. "We're the authority here," he said, pointing at my doorbell camera. "That's a violation." There it was, the intimidation tactic. Karen was cornered, and like every bully, she was trying to scare her way out. My pulse picked up, but I kept my tone calm. "Look, gentlemen," I said evenly. "If this is an official HOA matter, you can send a written notice, just like your boss usually does. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got work to do." I started to close the door, but the big guy shoved his hand against it, stopping it cold. "We're not done here," he growled. That's when I pulled out my phone and hit record. "You're preventing me from closing my door," I said loudly, making sure the microphone picked it all up. "And you're refusing to leave my property. This is being recorded." They didn't move. Not until I heard another voice from across the street. "Hey!" It was Mr. Henderson, my retired neighbor, the one Karen fined for tonal discord wind chimes. He stood at the edge of his driveway, holding up his phone. "I got this on camera too," he shouted. The thugs turned their heads. That moment of hesitation told me everything. They weren't used to being watched. "Fine," the tall one snapped. "Let's go check your back gate. Then we're done." "Be my guest," I said, stepping outside with my phone still recording. "But I'm filming this entire thing for my safety." We walked toward the gate, the air thick with tension. The larger man suddenly shoved me against it. Not hard enough to break skin, but hard enough to make a point. "Think, you're smart with your cameras?" he snarled. Before I could respond, Henderson's voice boomed again. "That's assault. I've got it all on video." The two men froze. They looked from me to Henderson, realizing how badly they'd just messed up. Without another word, they backed away, heading for their unmarked sedan. They sped off, leaving tire tracks and a cloud of cowardice behind. I exhaled slowly, adrenaline buzzing through my veins. Henderson walked over, his phone still recording. "You okay?" he asked. "Better than they are," I said, watching the sedan vanish down the street. "Thanks for the backup." He nodded grimly. "We're all sick of her, son. Time someone took her down." Legal nugget. In most U.S. states, you are legally allowed to record trespassers or acts of intimidation on your own property for self-defense and evidence purposes. As I saved the footage to the Hoolan file, one thing became clear. Karen wasn't just corrupt. She was desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. It was time to take her crown. If she ruled by clipboard, I'd take her down by the book. After the stunt with her fake security team, it was obvious Karen wasn't going to stop. Every time I pushed back, she doubled down. But this time, she'd picked the wrong neighbor to bully. She might have built her little kingdom on fines, fear, and HOA bylaws. But I was about to use those same bylaws to tear her throne apart. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of black coffee and a thick binder labeled HOA governing documents. It was the most soul-crushing reading material ever written. Dense legal text, no punctuation mercy, and font size small enough to qualify as cruelty. Still, somewhere in that bureaucratic nightmare was the key to ending Karen's reign. It took hours, but when I finally found it, my tired eyes widened like I'd struck gold. Article 10, Section 4, Recall of Board Members. Any board member, including the president, can be removed from office by a majority homeowner vote. To trigger that process, a petition signed by at least 25% of homeowners. That was it. My way out. My revenge. My justice. Completely legal. Completely by the book. The next morning, I printed out a clean stack of petitions with one bold heading. Petition for special meeting to recall HOA President Karen Hoolan and the current board. Below it, I added lines for names, signatures, and addresses. Then I grabbed my clipboard, oh, the irony, and started knocking on doors. At first, people were cautious. Everyone had a Karen story, but no one had ever dared act. But the second I mentioned the recall clause, their hesitation melted into fury. Mrs. Gable signed before I even finished explaining. "She fined me for aggressive petunias," she said, voice trembling with anger. "Who finds flowers?" The young couple down the street told me Karen had charged them $50 because their daughter's chalk drawings on the sidewalk were unauthorized graffiti. Another neighbor said he'd been fined for leaving his trash can out 10 minutes past collection time. Every door revealed a new horror story, a fresh wound inflicted by Karen's tyranny. By the end of the week, I had signatures from over half the homeowners, more than double the required number. People weren't just signing, they were thanking me. It wasn't just my fight anymore, it was the neighborhood's. While the ink dried on the petitions, I started working on the next phase, the presentation. If we were going to recall her, I wanted the meeting to be unforgettable. I opened my laptop and titled the slideshow, HOA, A Journey into Madness. The opening slide featured a photo of my improperly coiled hose and a big red fine notice stamped over it. The next slide showed Mr. Henderson's tonal discord wind chimes. followed by a cash register sound effect every time a fine popped up. I wanted the crowd laughing before I hit them with the serious stuff: the theft, the police case, the glitter bomb, and her hired thugs. When I was done, I sat back, staring at the glowing screen. It was perfect. Equal parts evidence, outrage, and poetic justice. Ever fought back against your HOA? Tell your story below. The next morning, I printed the official recall notices and sealed them in envelopes. I saved the last one for her, the queen of fines herself. When I stepped out into the sunlight, the paper felt heavy in my hand. Not from the ink or the staples, but from what it represented. I was walking straight to Karen's door to serve her the notice that would end her rule. And for once, the power was mine. When she opened the door, she was still faintly green. I mean that literally. A week had passed since the glitter bomb incident, and though she'd scrubbed herself half to death, the faint hue of neon still clung to the edges of her hairline and under her fingernails like a curse. It was poetic. No amount of bleach or lies could wash away what she'd done. And now, I was about to make sure the entire neighborhood saw it too. I walked up her driveway with purpose, the official recall notice tucked neatly in a manila envelope. My phone camera was clipped to my shirt pocket, recording the entire thing. Not because I expected fireworks, but because with Karen, anything could turn into a spectacle. She opened the door before I even rang the bell. "Michael," she said, voice syrupy sweet but laced with venom, "to what do I owe this unexpected intrusion?" I met her smile with calm precision. "Pursuant to Article 10, Section 4 of the HOA bylaws," I said evenly, "I am serving you with an official notice of a special meeting to discuss the recall of you and the entire board of directors." Her face went white, then blotchy red. The polite smile vanished like someone had flipped a switch. "You have no authority to do that," she snapped, stepping closer. "This is harassment. You're violating procedure." I held up the envelope. "Actually, the procedure is quite clear. A petition signed by more than 25% of homeowners triggers a special session. I have over 50. She didn't take the envelope. She snatched it. The papers crumpled slightly in her grip, the sound of her nails scratching against the seal cutting through the air like static. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into," she hissed. "You think a few signatures make you powerful? You're playing with fire." I smiled. A calm, measured smile I'd been saving for this exact moment. "Then I hope you brought a hose." I turned and walked away before she could speak again, her voice rising behind me in a shrill mix of curses and legal jargon. As I reached the sidewalk, I looked back just long enough to see her slam the door hard enough to rattle her porch light. It was done. The notice had been served. The HOA recall meeting was officially scheduled for 1 week later. The rest of that week felt like preparing for a trial. I refined my PowerPoint presentation, rehearsing it like a courtroom opening statement. Every slide mattered. The first half was light: mockery, humor, and proof of her ridiculous fines. The second half was pure fire. The porch camera footage of her stealing the glitter bomb package, the video of her glowing like a radioactive traffic cone, the GPS map leading straight to the stolen goods in Unit C27, and finally, the footage of her security thugs assaulting me on my own property. Every piece of evidence told the same story. Karen Hulin's empire was built on theft, intimidation, and lies. And now all of it was about to be projected, literally, onto a 12-foot screen for everyone to see. By the morning of the meeting, the neighborhood buzzed like a live wire. Cars lined the street outside the community clubhouse. People clustered in groups, whispering and pointing. Some looked excited, others looked nervous. Everyone knew something big was coming. I walked inside, laptop in hand, heart steady but alive with adrenaline. The air was thick with anticipation. Karen sat at the front table, clipboard in hand like always, pretending everything was under control. Then, just as I was connecting my laptop to the projector, a distant wail broke through the murmur of the crowd. Police sirens. They were getting closer, and the look on Karen's face said she knew exactly who they were coming for. The crowd gasped as her glitter-covered face filled the projector screen. It started with laughter, small, uneasy chuckles as my slideshow began with the funny stuff. My improperly coiled hose, Mr. Henderson's tonal discord wind chimes, and Mrs. Gable's aggressive petunias. Every ridiculous fine, every absurd notice appeared on screen with a cash register sound effect. Cha-ching. The tension began to ease as people realized what I was doing. The room was on my side. Then I changed the tone. I clicked to the next slide. Karen's smiling HOA photo dissolved into a paused video frame. Her porch, my fake package, her hand reaching out. I pressed play. In perfect HD clarity, the entire room watched their HOA president steal a box from my porch. Gasps rippled through the crowd. And then came the grand finale. The glitter bomb explosion. Karen bursting through her front door glowing neon green. Screaming, flailing, covered head to toe in sparkling humiliation. The laughter this time wasn't nervous. It was cathartic. Neighbors doubled over. A few even clapped. Karen shot to her feet, face blotchy, voice trembling with fury. "This is slander," she screamed. "You can't use doctored footage to—" But I wasn't done. I clicked again, and the GPS map appeared. Her SUV's route from my porch to the storage unit, marked in glowing blue. The next slide, photos of Unit C27, stacked with stolen boxes under a haze of my signature green glitter. The room went dead silent. "Proof enough?" I asked quietly. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. That's when her son Grant snapped. He leapt from the front row shouting, "You're lying!" and lunged toward me. Before I could move, Mr. Henderson stuck out a leg, and Grant went sprawling. Two neighbors grabbed him by the arms, holding him down as the crowd erupted into chaos. And then, sirens. The clubhouse doors burst open, and Sergeant Miller strode in with two uniformed officers. "Karen Hewland," he said, voice calm but firm, "you are under arrest for theft, fraud, and conspiracy." Karen froze. The fight drained out of her. As Officer Chen cuffed her hands, a few flecks of green glitter fell from her hair, glimmering under the fluorescent lights like the last remnants of her false power. Legal nugget. Using HOA funds for personal enrichment or criminal purposes constitutes felony embezzlement under state law. Her empire had fallen, but as the police led her out, one question lingered in the silence she left behind. What would replace it? A month later, her for sale sign leaned like a white flag. It stood crooked in her yard, the same patch of grass she'd once fined people for overwatering. The once pristine lawn was fading, the fountain she'd installed with stolen funds dry and cracked. Karen Hewland's kingdom had finally fallen. She took a plea deal, guilty on multiple counts of theft, misuse of HOA funds, and conspiracy. The restitution alone was staggering. Between residents and retailers, she owed over $50,000. The judge didn't go easy on her either. A year behind bars, 2 years probation, and mandatory repayment to every homeowner she'd ever fined under false pretenses. Grant, still a minor, got community service and a diversion program. They both vanished from the neighborhood like a bad stain scrubbed clean. But their absence left a hole, one we were determined to fill the right way. The court appointed a neutral receiver to oversee the HOA's transition. No more secret fines. No more beautification funds. Every dollar was tracked, every rule rewritten. The bylaws were simplified into plain English, clear, fair, and transparent. And my favorite new rule? No HOA official could issue fines without written proof of violation and community review. The best change came next: parcel lockers. They installed them right by the clubhouse, sleek, coded, camera-guarded lockers that belonged to everyone. Deliveries became events again, little victories that made us all smile. Kids picked up birthday gifts. Neighbors swapped stories. We weren't afraid of our own mail anymore. The air in the neighborhood felt different, lighter. People waved again. Conversations replaced whispers. The fear that had hung over us for years, gone, replaced by laughter and the sound of Mr. Henderson's tonally discordant wind chimes ringing proudly in the breeze. I'd never planned to lead a revolt. I just wanted my sneakers back. But somewhere between the stolen boxes, the glitter bomb, and the police raid, something bigger happened. We remembered what community actually meant. When I look out at my porch now, I see more than a camera and a mailbox. I see proof that ordinary people can push back, that the smallest spark, or in my case, a handful of neon glitter, can expose the truth. Glitter sticks to everything, and sometimes it sticks to justice. Ever fought back against HOA corruption? Drop your story below, and don't forget to hit subscribe for the next showdown, because justice might be messy, but sometimes it shines.